taken over. A 100 protesters arrested this morning after breaking into Trump Tower, chanting "Free Mahmoud." Who's Mahmoud? He's a Syrian agitator who loves Hamas and hates Jews and who made so much mayhem at Columbia last year he cost the school millions of dollars. Trump's trying to deport him. And Democrats are siding with the anti-Semitic foreigner who broke the law. Democrats want to deport Elon but keep Mahmoud. They're standing for Mahmoud but not for a black kid with brain cancer who wants to be a cop. They used to stand for electric cars, but then Elon caught them censoring conservatives and stealing from the government, so they're attacking Teslas with pickaxes.
Armed with a pickaxe and sledgehammer in Seattle's Soto neighborhood, these two fellas went to town on this Tesla. The car was left in shambles with shattered windows, massive punctures, and tons of anti-Elon Musk graffiti.
We don't like what Elon Musk is doing.
This man would only give me his first name.
Greg, sorry.
But says he actually owns the white Model S.
I bought it just to destroy it.
A man sledgehammered his own Tesla to get back at Elon after he paid for it. If there's one thing liberals are good at, it's destruction. They can't build a reservoir, a high-speed rail, or a charging station, but they can tear down a statue, a border, and a Tesla. It's one thing for the kid in the back of the car to keep saying, "Daddy, are we there yet? Are we there yet?" But it's another for the kid to slash his own tires. Remember the Heinz commercial?
Want that for Heinz? Sure.
When you've got something this rich, this thick, why waste time with anything else? Heinz ketchup. The best things come to those who wait.
We don't even have to wait that long for the good things. Trump cut off the ability of Russia to sell oil to Europe and said if Putin doesn't agree to a ceasefire, Russia's going to suffer devastating consequences. And this morning, Putin says he's going to agree to a 30-day ceasefire. Isn't that what liberals have been wearing the Ukraine flag pins for? To stop the Russian invasion? But since Trump's brokering the peace, Democrats are anti-peace. And no one gave him any credit. Peacenik Liz Warren's clapping her hands like this to keep funding a war that never ends. Now, if Trump wins the Nobel Peace Prize, are Democrats going to even be able to say congrats? Gas prices just hit 3-year lows. Mortgage rates are falling. Inflation's cooling. And border crossings, they basically stopped. These are all things Democrats argued a president had no control over. Then how'd all these things happen when we got a new president? Democrats were for Doge for decades. But now that Trump's the one doing the doging, they're standing up for waste, fraud, and abuse.
Until today, USDA was funding a $397,000 grant in the San Francisco Bay Area to educate queer, trans, and BIPOC urban farmers and consumers about food justice.
So if you're a straight urban farmer, you don't get money. Only a queer urban farmer gets money. $400,000 for a pack of seeds, some gardening gloves, and a watering can. You know how much mulch you can buy for $400,000? They're stealing the money. If we can doge queer urban garden grants, we could probably balance the budget.
When the president balances the budget, his first move is going to be, he has suggested that he would like to waive taxes for people under $150,000. That's aspirational, that when we balance the budget, and let me tell you, he's got a plan to balance this budget.
Trump wants to doge taxes for the working class, and Democrats are breaking into Trump Tower, screaming to free a radical Muslim. Imagine how great this country would be if we could all work together, and Democrats didn't just oppose to oppose. CNBC's mad about the market and blames Trump's tariffs, but there's a method to the madness.
Yesterday, General Motors was in. They want to invest $60 billion. The people from Facebook were in yesterday. They're going to invest $60 billion by the end of the year. Apple, as you know, a few days ago announced $500 billion investment. They're going to build their plants in the United States, which, as you know, almost all of their plants are in China. Now they're building in the United States.
This trade war, which is in its second week, is already bringing in money, jobs, and manufacturing. Politicians lost 100,000 manufacturing plants over 40 years and 5 million jobs. It could take longer than 2 weeks to fix it. The S&P's off 10% now, and the media acts like it's Black Friday. The S&P had a stretch where it fell off 10% just last year, and another 10% dip the year before. It happens. It's going to take a minute to bring manufacturing back. It's the only thing both parties agree on. The media never panics when we lost the muscle of American industry. As long as equities were up, the media was happy. Who cares about American jobs and wages? They threw parties for globalization. All the brilliant minds said the earth was flat and it was the end of history. Not so fast.
We've been ripped off for years, and we're not going to be ripped off anymore. No, I'm not going to bend at all. Aluminum or steel or cars. We're not going to bend. We've been ripped off as a country for many, many years. We've been subjected to costs that we shouldn't be subjected to.
Today we started a booze war. The Europeans didn't like our steel tariff, so they put a 50% tariff on whiskey. 47 doesn't drink, so we just put a 200% tariff on all European wines and champagne, which will probably break the French, and they'll surrender like usual. Looks like for now, Jesse Waters won't be buying any more Bordeaux, so if anybody knows any great California cabs, let me know. Trump's fighting the trade war that Democrats promised to fight for decades, but never did.
I know you don't like Trump's style.
No.
You haven't liked it for 12 years.
I don't want...
I spent, an hour on my way up here looking at all these old articles coming out of liberal outlets over the past 10, 15, 20 years, talking about the disaster free trade has had on middle-class America, how it's destroyed manufacturing in this country, how once upon a time the Rust Belt was thriving, now it's in decay. You can't blame that on Donald Trump for wanting to focus and put a microscope and saying, wait a minute here, we have left a significant percent of our fellow Americans behind. Let's fix it.
Oh, yeah. The whole world treats America like a duty-free shop, but they won't even let a single American company through their door. What's the Democrat strategy to get other countries to lower their tariffs? What's the Democrat strategy to bring manufacturing jobs home? The only Democrat strategy is to print and spend and tax until we go bankrupt. It's not like the markets aren't going to go back up. Trump's first term market performance was better than Biden's. Trump ran on trade. Voters elected him. And now he just got started.
Rome wasn't built in a day, of course. This is not going to happen overnight. I think it's going to take time, right? Some of the stuff, you're already seeing factories that are adding shifts for American workers. That happens immediately. Some factories, it takes 18 months or 2 years to build a new facility. So it really depends industry by industry. But the basic thrust of President Trump's economic policies is if you invest in the United States of America, you're going to be rewarded with lower taxes, lower regulations, lower energy costs. If you want to build a factory in China, that's your right, but you're going to pay.
Trump's done everything else so quickly, we just expect a lot and really fast. That's all. But it took 40 years to lose these jobs. Trump's not going to get them back overnight. He won trade wars against China, Canada, Mexico, South Korea in his first term, and we had no inflation, high wages, and a healthy stock market. Biden broke the bank, the border, took years to reopen schools and the economy, let companies move offshore, and never even called Putin once to end the war. It's going to take a second to flush Bidenomics out of the system. Trump's not creating a recession, he's preventing a Great Depression.
We were always going to have a transition from this incredible, unsustainable level of government spending that we had. I think last week I called it a detox. The easy thing for us to have done would have been to come in and just keep this massive spending level going. And it's unsustainable, but could we have kept it going for a year, 2 years, maybe even 4? Maybe, but you're risking a financial calamity.
The media sees this trade war as undisciplined and haphazard because they don't listen to what the White House says, but I do. Tax regulation and spending cuts, a secure border, and fair trade will create an economic boom that's going to grow jobs, wages, and profits and make your portfolio as fat as Pelosi's. America's expanding. You can call this market growing pains. We're also expanding geographically.
Canada only works as a state. It doesn't. We don't need anything they have. As a state, it would be one of the great states anyway. This would be the most incredible country visually. If you look at a map, they drew an artificial line right through it. between Canada and the U.S. Just a straight artificial line. Somebody did it a long time ago, many, many decades ago, and makes no sense. It's so perfect as a great and cherished state. Keeping "O Canada," the national anthem. I love it. I think it's great. Keep it. But it'll be for this state, one of our greatest states. Maybe our greatest.
Trump's White House is even asking the Pentagon to develop military options for the Panama Canal. The Panamanian military can either work with us or work for us, if you know what I mean. And Greenland's basically inevitable.
Greenland. What is your vision for the potential annexation of Greenland and getting them potentially to...
Well, I think it'll happen, and I'm just thinking, I didn't give it much thought before, but I'm sitting with a man that could be very instrumental. You know, Mark, we need that for international security.
Look at this map right here. Doesn't that make sense? See Greenland, see Russia, see Alaska and Canada. This great game is going to move from the Mideast to the Arctic, and Trump knows precious real estate when he sees it. Bernie Sanders says it's the scariest time he's ever seen since he's been alive, but it's shaping up to be the most exciting.
America's going to become more lethal, more economically strong, and we're participating in that, and we're thrilled. The part I love is that we're winning. The part I love almost more is that we're getting to do our usual humiliate the critics of Palantir game, and it makes my life a lot of fun. America is the greatest experiment, the greatest country that has existed, and we must support it.
Making Money host Charles Payne is here. So that genius you interviewed, Palantir's CEO, he seems optimistic. Everybody else seems so fragile. Why is that?
Because he's a doer, he's a visionary, and he's doing it. You know, this is a guy, by the way, Alex Karp. I became a fan over the last year. Just the way he has dissed Wall Street analysts for being so dumb, for being so negative, as his stock has become a juggernaut that everyone on Wall Street said would not work out. And so he's got a chip on his shoulder, but he just wrote a book, and I'm telling you right now, what he talks about in this book on how to survive, how the West has naturally survived through its instincts, through controlled violence, through compassion, that we forget sometimes, although our foes never forget it. And so the irony of all of this, the only place that we're losing the tariff battle is on the public relations front because of America's establishment and folks who don't know better. You mentioned CNBC earlier. Watching them is so cringeworthy every single day. I toggle over and they just, I mean, the data comes out. They brace yourself for a very inflationary PPI number. 2, 3, 1. Oh my God, it's not inflationary. Someone go sift through page 33 and find something in there before we get back from commercial break. Every day, every single day. But here's the problem. We got a report today on the sentiment of individual investors. And it's almost 60% bearish. It's the least bullish it's been in a long time. I worry about people who watch this show and sell. They watch these programs, and people have never built a thing in their life. And they're on op-ed pages, they're on editorial boards, and they get to tell us that tariffs aren't working, they won't work, they've never worked. Read your history, understand what's going on. Because what you said, your opening, I'm telling you, Jesse, your openings are really great. I don't know who's helping you on the economic side, but that was perfect. That was spot on. $2 trillion in announcement. Good. I know you're not watching CNBC because we've been doing this from an insane asylum.
Well, listen, I did watch it today because Bessent was on. I wanted to see what he had to say. And he seemed relaxed, seemed fine, seemed like he knew exactly what was going on. And everybody else was freaking out. Charles, I remember during COVID, Joe Biden was elected to beat the virus. Remember? He was going to beat the virus.
Yeah.
2 years after he was elected, everybody had caught COVID. He didn't beat the virus. Everybody just caught the virus. But no one panicked. Everybody just waited for Joe to do his thing. And it's been 2 weeks since this trade war started.
Yeah.
If they could give the same amount of patience they gave to Biden to beat the virus, to Trump to beat these bad trading partners, the sentiment of this market would heal.
The market's going to heal no matter what, right? And the market's going to rebound. And here's the irony. People who are trying to use the stock market now as a report card on President Trump are going to really regret this 4 years from now. What I love about Scott Bessent is not only his even tone, Listen to what he was saying. It could have been a status quo. If they don't want anyone to write negative things about him, but ironically, it's the Democrats who used to use that old analogy, the frog in the boiling water. President Trump is nudging that frog. He's waking that frog up. He's saying to the American public, hey, we are in boiling water. We are dying. Once you nudge it, it feels the pain. But you also have to nudge it to make it move. And that's exactly what this administration is trying to do. And I just got one word for you, two words for you. I know you can't get to Bordeaux, but have you ever tried Boone's Farm?
No, I haven't. It looks like I can't afford Bordeaux anymore. So anything besides that, I'll try. And you know, they always say in the morning, you want to first thing, eat the frog. That means tackle the hardest thing right when you get out of bed. Start your day like that. And Trump's doing it with trade. And I'm glad we're getting it out of the way early. And I think it'll work.
Me too.
All right. Enjoy the wine. Good to see you, Charles. 4 Democrats are running for president. We'll tell you who they are. Kamala Harris was supposed to be the Democrats' savior, but her campaign fell apart. Here's one reason why. Joe Biden sabotaged her. A new book says Joe wouldn't let Kamala run her own campaign. Her campaign was staffed by his aides who sought to defend his presidency at any cost. And the day of the debate with Trump, Biden gave Kamala a call. It was an unusual kind of pep talk and another reminder about the loyalty he demanded. No longer able to defend his own record, he expected Harris to protect his legacy. Whether she won or lost the election, he thought she would only harm him publicly by distancing herself from him. He needed just 3 words to convey how much all of that mattered to him. No daylight, kid. Kamala needed a firm message, but after flopping an interview sitting next to little Timmy, her team decided all she needed was a firm chair. Quote, for the rest of the campaign, her team required that she be provided a chair that met certain specifications. Leg height, no less than 15 inches. Floor to top of seat height, no less than 18.9 inches. Wow. Arms on chairs may not be very high. Arms must fall flat at a natural height. Chairs must be firm. Speaking of Tampon Tim, he's back. And he says it's all his fault.
Look, I own this. We wouldn't be in this mess if we'd have won the election. And we didn't. We have to make sure that Americans know it's not just that Donald Trump is bad, but we're offering them something better. And I think that's what we need to work on.
And Tampon's sure putting in the work. He's launching a nationwide town hall tour in Republican districts. He's obviously running. Does anybody want this? Walz inserting himself into the national conversation is like the guy at the cocktail party with bad breath. And he's got company. Gavin, Mayor Pete, and Rahm Emanuel are all jockeying for the nom. Gavin soft launched his campaign with a new podcast. Michelle Obama trying the podcast thing, but the premiere was a flop. Barack hasn't even promoted it. That's weird. Mayor Pete moved to Michigan hoping to run for Senate, but now he says he'll sit that race out too and focus on the future of the country, which means he's running for president. And now Maxine Waters, no relation, says that Trump slimming down our spending is setting the stage for a civil war.
I'm worried that Trump is on the edge of creating a civil war. He alluded to it more than once. He alluded to the fact that if he did not get reelected, that there could be a civil war. What does Trump expect? Oh, I believe he expects violence. I believe he expects confrontation. I believe he's working toward a civil war.
Tommy Lahren, Outkick.com host and host of the 100 Days with Tommy Lahren. All right, let's go one by one. Gavin Newsom, does he have the chops?
He's desperately trying to convince us he's a moderate, right? But what I'm actually interested in is he may have funded a bust of himself in the San Francisco City Hall. There's no one that loves Gavin more than Gavin. If he can convince the country to love him half as much as he loves himself in the sight of his own reflection in shiny objects, then he's probably off to a great start. What I noticed between all those possible contenders, they're all, for the most part, white males. I believe, I'm not assuming anyone's gender or their racial identity. You can be whatever you want in the Democrat Party. Yes. But you went from black woman to all white men. Diversity is dead. DEI is dead.
Are you saying that the Democrats are never going to run a woman again?
You know, Hillary might make a comeback.
Or Michelle.
Michelle, well, you know.
Have you listened to this podcast? All she does is rag on her husband.
Yeah, there's trouble in paradise there. I think after the Kamala Harris loss, those two were the power couple, and now they don't have to keep up the front, the facade. They're happy on the yachts. They're happy doing the podcast. Michelle, though, is figuring out that she needs Barack.
She does. The first time with her brother, I think they need to bring the husband back. Let's talk about Mayor Pete, who has a husband, very much in love, so we believe. Do you think he has potential as a presidential nominee, Mayor Pete?
Well, it went so well the first time, right? After all those candidates were on that stage, including Kamala Harris, they picked Joe Biden. So what does that tell you? They're not really looking for a radical. They're not really looking for a new generation. They went with Joe because he was their best option then. And does Pete have a chance? I'm not sure if you're trying to win over masculine men. I'm not sure Pete's the route that you go, but I could be wrong.
Okay, he was in war, right? Didn't he have a helmet? I forget. I shouldn't try to talk about his military service. I never served, except in the war on Christmas. Tommy, what about Tiananmen Tim?
Listen, Tim is the last person to realize that he was simply the wingman on a political kamikaze mission with Kamala Harris. And I love the fact that he's really taken it. You know, he's taken it upon himself. His daughter is famous on TikTok. I think that's bled into his ego a little bit. Nobody takes him seriously. But the fact that he has now been on national television more than Kamala Harris tells you it wasn't Joe that sabotaged Kamala. It was Kamala that sabotaged Kamala. Joe might have helped. But listen, this whole thing about, well, he said no daylight. What if she doesn't have a brain of her own? She can't think. She can't speak on her own.
Is that a rhetorical question?
I mean, I think we saw it.
Tommy, do you have any chair specifications? Is this chair to your liking? The height, the arm level?
I do. I appreciate this chair. It's a nice chair. And, you know, we're at the same level here. So
you don't require 18.9 inches in height.
I'm surprised you didn't have them lower mine just a little bit, Jesse, to keep yours up a little higher.
I do.
You know, I
have an ego, not as touchy as Gavin, but I do like to tower over my guests. Thank you so much, Tommy.
Thank you.
Johnny celebrates Women's History Month.
What is a woman?
A woman is anyone who says she's a woman.
Can anybody be a woman?
Yeah.
Every time a Republican gets in power, it's the end of the world.
I think right now, and I'm being very serious, I'm 80 years old, I think this is the most serious crisis that this country has ever faced. I think the entire idea of the United States is in jeopardy. I can think of no bigger crisis this country's been in my lifetime, ever.
Ending wars, reshoring manufacturing, cutting fraud. Yeah, worse than 9/11, Nam, and the Great Recession. America isn't having a crisis, the Democrats are. This is the same sky is falling nonsense they spewed before the election, and it didn't work. Nobody believes the media anymore. And don't you dare quote the Washington Post to Gorka.
Is that the same Washington Post that propagated the Russia collusion hoax for the last 8 years?
Well, regardless of the Russia...
No, not regardless. You're quoting the Washington Post to me, which is as effective as posting for me or quoting to me any other pillar of the fake news industrial complex. I really couldn't care less what the Washington Post or the New York Times says, especially when it's anonymous government officials. If it's true, put your name to it. If it's not, shut up.
Democrats don't really believe in anything. They've been propped up for years, and now those pillars crashing down. The media was the first pillar to crumble. Voters ignored their Hitler hoaxes and voted MAGA. Trump's making news every day, but ratings at CNN and MSNBC are down 70%. After 4 years of having a ghost for a president, networks should be basking in the golden age. They're finally something to talk about. But not every host can handle the action.
This is day 52. I thought it was day 92. It turns out it's day 52, Rachel, and I'm exhausted at day 52. And so I'm going to take next week off. And I'm telling you that now because I know you don't like it when I just drift away, and I don't. Just taking next week off. Then I can come back and go with you all the way to the 100 days.
Little Lawrence is taking a sabbatical because he's watching his party get destroyed. Republicans are launching a full frontal assault on the power centers of the Democratic Party. The bureaucracy, which was basically has covered for and supported Democrats for decades, is getting gutted. Big tech went from censoring Trump to funding his presidential library. Sanctuary cities can't protect migrant criminals from getting iced. Colleges and universities that turn nice students into radicals are being defunded if they don't behave. Columbia just lost $400 million because they sided with Arab Spring breakers. And Trump's hitting universities in Maine with a funding freeze until they stop letting boys play in girls' sports. Democrats' fundraising arm also in big trouble. Act Blue, which helped Democrats secure over $16 billion, is now under congressional investigation for potentially fraudulent and illicit financial activity. After investigators started asking questions, senior execs started leaving. People who've been there for over a decade are suddenly retiring. Interesting. Trump's also disarming Democrats' biggest weapon, lawfare. He banned law firms that laundered Democrat hoaxes from working with the government and yanked security clearances for lawyers that helped Jack Smith. This will make firms think twice before diving that deep into political warfare. Let the voters pick the presidents, not lawyers. The veil's been lifted. The country sees Democrats for what they are, scam artists.
How much have you spent on charitable causes this year?
It's just blurry. I be doing so much.
BLM? Because you want to be so black power?
BLM is a scam.
Clip that. Send it to the
BLM was literally a scam. They had bought mansions, and you probably wouldn't know anything about it because you don't care about black people. Follow black
I do care about black people.
American Majority founder Ned Ryan is here. All right, so you got all these pillars that have propped up Democrats for decades, the bureaucrats, the lawyers, big tech, the media, colleges. They are all being attacked everywhere at the same time. This is huge. What's next?
Well, continuing on, I'm just thinking about Elon and Doge, and you're talking about the bureaucracy. But what they've also discovered is that in their beginning to look for waste, fraud, and abuse, they discovered hundreds of billions of dollars that were being funneled into Democrat-affiliated NGOs. And so, Jesse, not only were our taxpayer dollars being used to actually fund leftists, they're actually being used to aggressively fund these NGOs that were undermining this country. And so you take away that funding and you begin to take away that pillar. I love the fact that the corporate media, who I call the corporate propagandists, the American people, they're not about honesty. They're just an auxiliary of the Democratic Party and the administrative state. And then you look at what's taking place with the colleges right now. I hope they continue going down this path of not only yanking funding, I hope they go after their endowments. Most of these colleges and universities are indoctrination centers of higher learning that are churning out leftists, and I think we need to have a really strong look at going after them.
I just saw some news that Trump took some grants away from Johns Hopkins, where my sister works, and now my mom's upset. She's texting me. It's going to be a whole family thing, so we'll have to deal with that over the weekend. But Ed, when you talk about these thieves, because that's what they are. I mean, you don't take money and pay yourself a huge salary and not do anything with the money except give it to other NGOs that open the borders and open the prisons. I mean, that is a massive scam, and we're hearing Pam Bondi's already investigating it as fraud.
The thing that's amazing to me, Jesse, is how abused the American taxpayer has been to actually fund the undermining of their country. Again, think about the so-called religious charities that were actually incentivized to cause this massive illegal immigration under the Biden administration with American taxpayer dollars. I think the other interesting one, though, that you mentioned is Act Blue. I have thought for a long time that Act Blue is a criminal enterprise, and now it's getting the scrutiny that it deserves. And I think that if Republicans continue down this path, I think they will discover that Act Blue was a money laundering operation. There was a lot of smurfing that took place, identity theft, and just to run some of these small dollar donations. And I think if you start to undercut the Act Blue aspect of the Democratic machine, I think Democrats are in serious trouble. You cut off their taxpayer dollars for their NGOs, you cut off their political donations for Act Blue. I like where we're headed on this, but I hope that Republicans keep going.
Yeah, how much you want to bet foreign cash went to Act Blue and that
100%.
went into these elections? We know how much they
100%.
hate foreign interference in elections. That we know they think that's the biggest crime against the country. It's going to be interesting to see if they were guilty of that very same crime. Thank you so much, Ned. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, Jesse.
Happy DEI Thursday.
There are a lot of people watching this right now who are
confused about this decision,
Okay.
Or upset by it. So just spell out, just give me your logic, particularly on this sort of on the one hand, on the other. What is the cost you see to the constitutional order of a shutdown that isn't already being done now?
It's a dramatic cost. Here's why, Chris. Under a shutdown, it is the executive branch, in this case Trump, Musk, Doge, and Vogt, who's head of the OMB, who we all know are authoritarians, vicious, nasty, who would have sole control over what is funded and what isn't. They get to determine what is a, quote, essential service. And they will just cut to smithereens, far greater than in the CR bill, which is a lousy bill, far greater than that, what could be funded and what couldn't. And there's no recourse. You can't go to court. This is a decision totally in the executive branch.
Yeah, so Chuck Schumer has backed himself into a corner. He's in a lose-lose situation. If he votes for this bill, progressives are going to axe him. He's already skating on thin ice as it is. I think this is going to end him as the leader of the party, believe it or not. That's just my own personal opinion. But secondly, it's a loss because if he goes against the bill and the government actually shuts down, that gives Donald Trump all the authority to cut whatever programs he wants to cut, and there's no way to oppose it. But what I want you to do is hear Kellyanne Conway explain why President Trump has Democrats exactly where he wants them.
They look at everything through the prism of Donald Trump, who has the Democrats exactly where he wants them, Liz. If they shut down the government, Americans will believe it was the Democrats' fault, and then they're handing Trump the ability to decide which levers are operable again, what's essential and what's not. So he can go department by agency, by program. And we've seen in the last 52 days of the Trump presidency, we've seen the last 100 days since he was elected, Liz, that the Democrats are feckless, reckless, and rudderless. And this is not a good message for them either. People know that those Democrats spent money we don't have on things we didn't need, and that our prices went up. High quality, high paying jobs went down, and yet there were no tariffs.
So it's already enough that President Trump has Democrats on their heels, but it's even worse that they're now turning on each other, which is why I want to show you these next couple of clips where you have AOC, Bernie Sanders throwing Chuck Schumer under the bus, and they strongly disagree with his decision. Check this out.
Chuck Schumer, I guess the Senate Democratic leader, your senator, said at this meeting that he is going to vote for cloture. He is going to vote to allow there to be a simple majority vote. You think that's wrong?
I believe that's a tremendous mistake. Yes.
Why?
I think, well, first and foremost, the American people, if anyone has held a town hall or has seen what has been happening in town halls, American people, whether they are Republicans, independents, Democrats, are up in arms about Elon Musk and the actual gutting of federal agencies across the board. This continuing resolution codifies much of this chaos that Elon Musk is wreaking havoc on the federal government. And I cannot urge enough how bad of an idea it is to empower and enable Donald Trump and Elon Musk in this moment. It is dangerous and it is reckless.
Well, so at this point, you probably have heard these same talking points ad nauseum, and this is no different from AOC. This is exactly what we expected her to say. The only thing I'm looking to highlight in that clip is how she threw Chuck Schumer under the bus, right? There was no support for what he's doing. She didn't even entertain why he would make this decision. She's going to the extremes, and I'm telling you, she represents the progressive side of this base. They're not going to buy Chuck Schumer's excuse on this, so it's not a good look. Now, before we get to Bernie Sanders and more of what she had to say, let's first hear from the president himself and what he had to say about all this.
They do a shutdown, and ultimately that might lead to very, very high taxes, because we're talking about a shutdown. We're talking about getting to work immediately on the greatest tax bill ever passed. That was the one we did. It was a renewal, and it's in addition to it. And we're going to cut people's taxes. And if we don't open, the Democrats are stopping all of these good things that we're providing. We're providing the greatest package of benefits that this country's ever provided. The biggest part of that's going to be tax cuts for the middle class and for businesses, small businesses, employers, people that hire people in jobs. And if it's shut down, it's only going to be, if there's a shutdown, it's only because of the Democrats. And they would really be taking away a lot from our country and from the people of our country.
So it's clear that the leverage is with Republicans and President Trump. Democrats have more to lose than Republicans do. And this actually begs the question, which is what Jake Tapper asked AOC, what I'm about to show you right now, is if you believe President Trump, Elon Musk, the entire administration is made up of weak leadership, if Chuck Schumer votes for this bill, is he a weak leader too?
You just talked about the strength of your leadership. Chuck Schumer just said that he's going to vote for cloture. Not only the Democrats can do it, but he's going to participate in it. Does that mean that you think he's a weak Senate leader?
I think that would be a mistake. But we have time between now and tomorrow, and I hope that individuals that are considering that reconsider it.
Yeah, so there was no, hey, Jake Tapper, he's actually a strong leader. I disagree with him on this, but let's not question his leadership skills. She didn't say any of that, right? She totally dodged the question, which definitely shows you she's not on board with his way of doing things. That is very clear. And by the way, let's not forget Nancy Pelosi and Chuck not on board with his way of doing things. That is very clear. And by the way, let's not forget Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer muzzled her a few times and kept her in the back because she draws too much attention for the party. Now, she wasn't the only one to come out and trash Chuck Schumer and throw him under the bus. Here is Bernie Sanders strongly disagreeing with this decision.
I'm strongly going to vote no. I think the American people are sick and tired of Elon Musk, the richest guy in the world, running around slashing Social Security, veterans programs that Republicans are moving for massive tax breaks for the rich and cutting Medicaid and nutrition, moving us to oligarchy and authoritarianism. You got to draw a line. And I think the American people are prepared to stand with those of us who say that, you know what, we're a government of the people, by the people, for the people, not the oligarchy. And we're not going to give tax breaks to billionaires and take food away from hungry kids. You got to stand up. You got to fight back. You got to go into the streets. You got to rally the American people. I think you can win millions of people, Republicans, Democrats, independents, who really do not like the direction in which this country is now going.
All right, so let me just explain to you guys what Bernie Sanders is doing, because everything that came out of his mouth was a lie. There are no receipts. There are no pieces of legislation. There's nothing on paper that shows that Republicans are gutting veteran benefits, okay? That just does not exist whatsoever. Even the Secretary of the VA came out and nipped that in the bud. Bernie Sanders, what he is doing is trying to capitalize on this moment politically, okay? He's trying to gain momentum to possibly become the leader of the party as far as 2028 is concerned. You have to understand, he does represent the populist left. Now, it's not just this continuing resolution that's causing problems for Democrats. It's this new bombshell story that Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, the entire administration was cooking the books as pertains to border crossings.
ICE found tens of thousands of cases that were recorded as arrests when in fact the illegal aliens were simply processed and then released into American communities. I've been trying to reach out to former DHS Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas to get his response to these claims. I haven't heard back, but he previously blamed Congress for issues during a Senate hearing last year. Listen.
Our immigration system, however, is fundamentally broken. Only Congress can fix it. Congress has not updated our immigration enforcement laws since 1996, 28 years ago.
And sources tell Fox News that nationwide gotaways across the border right now are averaging about 77 in just the last few weeks. Harris, that is a lot lower than we have seen. These gotaways, as we know, are illegal migrants who successfully are able to evade Border Patrol agents.
So this is, again, another conspiracy theory proven to be true. We knew they were manipulating the numbers. We knew they were lying through their teeth. But every time we brought it up, what happened? We were shut down.
In the last 50 days, President Trump has arrested 32,809 arrests for illegal immigrants, okay? Under Biden, in the entire year of fiscal 24, 33,242. So in 50 days, they have done almost as much as they did in the entire year.
As President Trump said during his joint address to Congress, come to find out, we did not need a new bill to close the border. We needed a new president. Now, the president reacted to this new bombshell story of President Biden cooking the numbers.
They cheated on the numbers. The numbers were. I love that question. Who are you with?
Just the news, Amanda.
Very nice. That's good. That's
Do you
good.
know how many of those are criminal illegal aliens?
Many of
Biden's
them.
out of office.
Yeah.
100 Americans. Who
No, Biden fudged the numbers. The numbers were totally fake. And he gave fake numbers. I knew they were fake. Everybody knew they were fake, but now it came out. And terrible what they did. That administration was a horror show for this country.
And now it's come full circle. So this is a great lesson that even though these politicians are going to lie, in time, the truth will be exposed. And here's another bombshell scandal. You have a former FAA instructor saying that he's going to help the minority students cheat on the test.
Today when I get off at 11 o'clock, the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to finish out that email. I'm going to send it to each of you. And as you progress through the stages, refer to those images so that you will know which icons you should select. Now, I have a good mind to send it to one of my HR representatives first and give them the opportunity to sign off on it before you actually click it. But in the sake of time, I'm going to send it directly to you because I'm about 99.99% sure that it's exactly how you need to answer each question in order to get through the first phase.
Yeah, so I wanted to go over those stories because clearly Democrats, they're losing everywhere they go. The only thing that's actually been, I guess, some level of success for them are these, Biden appointed judges, Obama appointed judges that basically will pause whatever Trump has issued as an executive order. That is true, which means that it's just dragging out the process. In most cases, Trump will ultimately win. And then in some cases, he will lose. But the bottom line is that's the only progress Democrats have been able to make, or what they would probably call resistance. And it's just been an utter failure for themselves, their leadership, and of course, their party. And we are here to highlight every moment of it. Now, this leads me to the question of this video. What is your message about Chuck Schumer bending the knee and caving to this continuing resolution? Doesn't it prove that most of this is just a dog and pony show? It's performative.